Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm privileged to welcome a very senior and accomplished professional from USA, Mr. Hrishikesh Bhattacharya. Rishi, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Bhattacharya is a management consultant, a teacher, and an author. He's a former senior vice president of Unilever. He's a visiting faculty of strategy at the Ross School of Business in Michigan. He's co-authored several scholarly papers with Dr. C.K. Prahalad, and he's got a forthcoming book, which is titled Embrace the Future, The Soft Science of Continuous Business Transformation. And we'll talk about his book once he releases it in a few months from now. So, Rishi, before we start talking strategy, tell me about your journey in brief and inspired you to focus on strategy.
Well, it's been a long journey to start with.
Mm-hmm.
The professional journey is over 50 years, and it goes a little bit before that. So let me break it up into 20 years at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that will sort of make it easier.
Yeah.
So the first 20 years, education in St. Xavier's School in Ahmedabad, St. Xavier's College in Bombay after that, and then on to Institute of Management in Calcutta, culminating at the end of that with my first and only job with Hindustan Lever as a management trainee. So that's the first 20 years. The second 20 years, I went through the fairly well-known grind that you have to go through within Hindustan Lever in India. So starting out as a trainee salesman in the markets to becoming a sales manager, brand manager, and so on. So that went on for a while. And towards the latter part, I was on the board of the Lipton Company, and then onto the board of Hindustan Lever. So that's roughly the second 20 years. The third 20 years I spent, let me see now. So yeah, so I went to Brazil to start with, within Unilever. And then after a few years to the headquarters, and I was senior vice president for a category within the foods business. And as it happens, that was the first time ever that I had a formal job in strategy.
Okay.
I was made the strategy head for the foods business worldwide.
Wow.
So that was a sort of first thing. But looking back, what happens in our own lives is that you strategize from very early on, certainly after your professional life, at the start of your professional life and thereafter. Because what you realize is that if you got to be successful, you got to figure out what you want to achieve in whatever job you are doing. And once you figure that out, then you figure how do you get there. So strategy in very simple terms is how do you get there?
Absolutely. Well said.
Yeah.
And what would you say are some critical elements of a successful business strategy?
The most important thing in my experience I found is that a lot of CEOs and senior people start by saying, we need a new strategy. We need to work on a new strategy. Unfortunately, that's a wrong starting point because strategy is not the starting point. It is, as I said earlier, it's a way to get there. So if you don't know what there is, then you really cannot do a good strategy.
Right.
So in my experience and in my work and in my consulting work and so on, I have pushed people to articulate what your real objectives are.
Mm-hmm.
You want to achieve?
Mm.
What do you want to be to start with? And
Right.
what do you want to achieve? And the failures or what makes a good strategy was your question.
Mm.
Let me try and explain it by an example.
Sure.
So, in my early years in HLL, there was this very big, impressive brand called Lux.
Mm-hmm.
And Lux is still a very well-known brand in
Absolutely.
India.
Mm.
It is big. And the property we had around that brand was that it was the beauty soap of film stars.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very successful strategy.
Right.
But as I got older, I realized the limitations of expressing our ambition in that fashion.
Mm-hmm.
And what do I mean by that?
Mm.
Suppose we had said instead that Lux meets the grooming needs of film stars,
Mm-hmm.
then what would happen is that we would taken the other half of the market, which was the male film stars.
Mm.
The beauty concept kept it restricted to women.
Mm.
But if we had said grooming needs of film stars, it would
Mm.
have gone both across men and women.
Sure.
And instead of just being a piece of soap,
Mm.
it would go through the entire compass of grooming needs
Mm.
of the entire population.
Mm.
So, how you frame your ambition,
Mm.
even if you are very successful,
Mm.
how do you frame your ambition and then think around how to meet that ambition
Mm.
determines how do you get to a good strategy
Yep.
or not so good strategy.
What a great example. I mean, what you just told me about Lux is such a fascinating, opportunity that may have been considered. But Rishi, what are some common misconceptions about business strategies that a lot of CEOs or leaders have?
Yeah, I think what we tend to face as we ourselves work and when we see other people work
Mm.
is that it is often seen as a long drawn theoretical time wasting
Mm-hmm.
exercise, I would
Mm-hmm.
say,
Okay.
where people feel that we should get on, action is the key and we know what we need to do and,
Mm.
just get off our bums and, go and start
Mm.
implementing.
Mm.
Uh, I think that is a problem and a misconception of what strategy can do,
Mm.
what a good strategy can do, and
Mm.
what a differentiated, well, strategy is about differentiation. The
Yeah.
strategy is about what you have and how do you keep differentiating so that you are superior.
Mm.
So, if people don't spend the time thinking,
Mm.
thinking is not a luxury time, it is something that you have to do.
Mm.
And then balancing that out with, well, strategies fail both ways. I mean, it
Mm.
fails because of poor thinking or it fails because of poor action.
Right.
So, unless you can put together both the thinking part and the work part, action part in
Mm.
balance, uh, you fail. And then when you
Mm.
fail, you say it's not worth doing it. Or why
Right.
did you waste all this time? And if they have employed consultants, then they also say, why did we waste so much money?
Mm. What a great response. Very well said.
So
And Rishi, what role does innovation play in crafting a successful business strategy?
um, innovation is without doubt absolutely key
Mm.
to successful strategy. Um, but I think that the word innovation has got associated excessively to technology.
Right.
And innovation is always about what engineers are producing or what
Mm.
scientists are producing and so on. Um, that does, I mean, take us forward. There is no doubt about that.
Mm.
But what it does is that it prevents you from getting to the full potential that a multi-pronged innovation or innovation which is phrased as something across the business. Um, so there is innovation in distribution systems. There is innovation in brands and how you think around it. There is innovation in supply chain, which are huge benefits to a business.
Right.
My view is innovation is not only important, as you mentioned, innovation has to be thought through on a multi-functional and across the business basis. It's only when you do that that you get the full benefits of innovation.
Very well said. Great response. Thank you. My next question is that, you have seen strategy over, as you very nicely put it, into 320-year periods of your life. How have you seen strategy evolve? And what trends are you seeing, shaping the future? And, given the fact that your new forthcoming book is Embrace the Future, I thought I'll merge two questions into one.
No, this is a great question, Ashutosh, and it's a difficult question because we are literally talking about centuries, not just my 50 years, but
Absolutely.
500 years, 1,000 years. Strategy came into being. So indulge me a bit. I might take a little
Sure.
longer to
No,
think
please. Yeah.
About this particular question, which I think is critical to how also people think and evolve. So the first one to mention is how strategy evolved. And this concept of evolution is very, very important. It shows that it is human in the sense that it is live. It's not science, because science is fixed, cannot evolve. Once you solve it, once you know why the lightning comes, then it's a fact forever. It cannot change.
Right.
Evolution, on the other hand, as reference to the book that is not yet published, Gopal and I have called it a soft science. So it is science, but it is a soft science, and
Right.
therefore it evolves. And second thing, before I explain it in a way, is that you have to take different perspectives. So when you think about strategy, whose perspective is it? In which context are you talking strategy?
Right.
And I think that I will take just a practitioner's view of strategy, because I am a semi-academic.
Yeah.
So academics take a certain view of strategy. We practitioners take a different view of strategy, and so it is evolution, but from a practitioner's point of view. So the first things that you think about were the history of strategy. It came out of war. It came out of the concept of strategy came out of war, right?
Yeah.
From the Greek wars.
Correct.
Some of even the mythological wars, even our own Mahabharata and so on, is how do you strategize around it?
Absolutely.
Concept is how do you win? So strategy is about finding a way to win, and how to do that has sort of evolved. And I think from war, though there's a lot of war still today in the world, unfortunately, I think the world of sports taught us a lot about strategy.
Right.
And what brought into strategy is the concept of competition. From the war to the sport, it was still a desire to win, is still to find a way to win. Brought in the concept of competition. And that went on till about, I would say, the 70s or so, when Michael Porter of Harvard Business School, I mean, he is very celebrated strategist.
Yeah, absolutely.
He brought in the concept of industry and competition. So the concept of industry evolved into that. So it went from war to sports to industry. And then business strategy as a science or a soft science started emerging as a sort of serious business. And then I think Professor Prahlad CK, very good friend of mine, and we miss him. He brought in the concept of competence or core competence. And he also brought in the question of competing for the future. And these are concepts that are now building, that it came from winning to competition to now the future. And I think competition got sort of excessively driven. So people got very sort of narrow in their perspective. It was between them and competition. And it was, I survive, but you get killed. It started becoming a zero-sum game.
Right.
For a while. And that went on again for quite a while. And most of us in our early practicing lives were basically doing that, aggression as a way of business strategy.
Correct.
With the objective to win. But this concept of fixed industries, fixed competition, prevented you from the ability to go properly into the future. Because you were stuck in the past and the present. But all of us work not for yesterday, even today. If you've got to win, you've got to win only in the future. Time dimension is sort of goes forward.
Correct.
So how do you win into the future? I think the best concepts came from, I'm mentioning academics because they write things down.
Absolutely.
We guys speak and then it's forgotten. But when people write their thoughts down, then it sort of gets preserved and then you can refer to it. So Professor Kim Chin of INSEAD and Professor Chris Christensen of Harvard Business School, they have done tremendously good work on creating what Kim calls the blue ocean strategy, which is by finding new markets.
Yeah.
And Professor Christensen is probably the best contemporary strategist. Unfortunately, he passed away at a young age years ago. He created the concept of disruption. Disruptive markets, how to disrupt markets.
Right.
How to find invisible markets, that is, markets that you don't see. And this, I think, is now the cutting edge of how you think strategy. The fifth and last phase, I didn't phase it to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but I talked what's and things. So now the fifth phase, in my belief, and some of that will get reflected in our book, is that the consumer has to be thought through on a 360-degree basis. The needs of the consumer. Now, right from the 70s, people have said, meet consumer needs or meet consumer wants, but we have only done products or we have done services or whatever. We have not thought 360 degrees around the consumer. And to do that, you need platforms. And the platforms have to work with collaboration rather than competition. This is not yet quite crystallized, and some of us who have been thinking about it and practicing it a bit and things, we believe that the next frontier in this evolution is going to be 360 consumers interfaced at a 360-degree level.
Right.
With collaboration as a strategic weapon. So I think for whatever little my worth is,
Yeah, no, I
that's
mean, I think what you're saying makes so much sense. But continuing from your point number 5, I'd like us to I'd like to get your perspective on what are your thoughts on the role of technology and digital transformation, because that's going to be a significant part of the future of work
yeah.
when it comes to business strategies.
Yeah, I must confess to start with that I don't know much about digital or technology
Mm-hmm.
driving artificial intelligence and so on.
Mm-hmm.
These are modern things. We guys are a little bit
Mm-hmm.
old now,
Mm-hmm.
but in this next phase of the world,
Mm-hmm.
technology and AI is going to be very much like the computers when they came out in
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
and the robotics that came out in the 90s and then on. Um, these are things that come and they come with a promise and they come with a threat.
Mm-hmm.
They come with a promise that life will get better. It
Mm-hmm.
comes with a threat that we will lose jobs and it will kill us one day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my view is that it is not only extremely important
Mm-hmm.
that we embrace it fully
Mm-hmm.
and take all the good things that can come out of it
Mm-hmm.
and find a regulatory mechanism by which we try and the bad things that can happen from it too, which
Mm-hmm.
is equally likely if we don't manage it and control it. And the Europeans have just, I think, a couple of days ago, have announced a regulatory framework for
Mm-hmm.
artificial intelligence,
Right.
and you
Right.
get the
Very interesting. My next
yeah.
question, Rishi, is that how can businesses adapt to unforeseen strategy, disruptions? Like the world has just come out of COVID. Or I think we have come out of COVID. And, when this is, I don't know if you want to call it a blue ocean event, but what happened to the world in COVID? How does business strategy cope with such unforeseen disruptions?
I think strategy which is created now for the future
Mm,
uh, cannot cope for these things.
mm,
It is not something that you can reasonably visualize
mm.
into.
Right.
And as a business person, if something happens once in 100 years, or even in 50 years or 25 years, if it
Mm,
happens, uh, planning to cope for it today is probably wasteful.
mm,
So I think you have to leave it to the mindset and to the intelligence and to the drive of people on the spot at that point in time
mhm,
and take action there to the best of your ability, learning from what happened the last time. And some of
mm,
that has now been documented.
mm,
Uh, Keep that as a framework, but the world will be different the next time. Uh,
mm,
Not everything of that is going to work. That's why I said, don't strategize,
mm,
but take action. So that is one area where I would say action trumps strategy. You
mm.
just do the best you can. So I
Absolutely.
would not plan for COVID. Only thing, maybe I would plan one thing if I was a CEO of a company today,
Mm,
I would keep a survival fund.
mm,
So I must have enough cash in
mm.
the system to be able to look after 1 year of my business
Expensive. Right.
and keep my core people and so on and so forth, because people is a big resource,
Mm,
um, and probably the biggest resource. So how to save the people and their families, their lives
mm,
very important for CEOs to take that into account. So I would keep cash like all of us in our private investments. When the market falls by 20% tomorrow, what do? You say, do I have cash for the next 2 years so that I have to kill all my investments and not encash my capital?
Yeah.
I would only employ a similar strategy and keep it ready. Other than that, I won't do anything.
Fantastic. So I have time for one, maybe two questions. My next question to you, Rishi, is how can businesses align ethics and sustainability goals with their overall strategic objectives?
It has to align. It has to align. You can, I mean, some people do, you can't be a crook and make money. If your mindset is that I'm going to add value to the customer, in that process, all stakeholders that impact business must be taken care of.
Right.
And if people are going to be your biggest resource and you are unethical, it doesn't form a good cocktail. People respect. Why does Hindustan Lever get so much respect? Not for just their business results.
Right.
It gets it for the quality of their people very often. Why do the people of good quality stay there for a lifetime? People like me and Gopal, my co-author for the book, why have we lived the entire lifetime there? Is because of the ethics and values of a system in which you can prosper and which can be very successful. So success doesn't mean that you got to have erosion of ethics or go away from your culture. So traditional culture ethics is a mix in which, in my opinion, the best successes are created because you are sleeping well at night. And then you have energy for the morning when you are ethical and not worrying about who's coming out to catch you. Because you get caught.
Very well said. Very well said. Very well said. Rishi, my last question to you. We're running out of time, but I must ask you this question. Given your deep understanding of strategy and given the fact that a lot of our viewers and listeners are young and entrepreneurs, what would you say are a couple of lessons you would want them to take away when it comes to strategy?
You have a knack of asking very difficult questions.
Well, senior respected people can answer such difficult questions.
Well, I think the first thing is that a lesson that I learned in life, and I think young people need to learn in life, is that you cannot drag the past into the future. That incrementalism as a way of life, which many of us pursue, is a dangerous thing. You got to go out in the future and come back. So most of us work from 2015 to 2023, for example, going forward.
Yeah.
What you have to do is to go out to 2030 and work back to 2023 or 2024 and say, now that I know I want to go there, how do I sort of pursue the steps to get there?
Right.
First, that past will work into the future only if the future is going to be like the past.
Very well said.
Not going to be like the past, it's going to be. So that I would say is the first lesson that I would like young people to conceive, sort of keep in mind.
Yeah.
The second one is that uh, people get excited and proud about having very large market shares. People have been taught that you have to aim for big market shares and you're successful when you have large market shares. And you must kill the competition. So if you have a large market share, you have weak competitors. That, in my opinion, is a very, very dangerous thing. Because if you have a large market share, then you cannot grow because there is no market after this.
Correct.
And then if you have no competitors, then you can't even take away share from them.
Correct.
So both ways you get stuck and you start dying yourself. So the strategic way to think around markets or market shares is to redefine your market when your market share becomes large. And I would go back to the first example that we started this discussion with,
Lux.
which is Lux. So I had a huge market share and I could grow because India was growing and the economy was growing. But if I had rephrased myself into the grooming market for film stars, instead of the beauty soap of female film stars, my growth opportunities, my market share would come down very sharply. But that would be the impetus to grow it back into this newly defined market. So I think that's the second lesson.
Yeah.
I would like to leave to your younger audiences. And the third and last one is that you asked for three, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You asked for three. So this is the third one. The third one is that strategy cannot succeed or business cannot succeed unless you bring the full power of your intellect with the full power of you as a human being. That in our book, we have called this concept mind and heart or heart and mind. So businesses work well when people can combine the power of intellect, the power of humaneness, of how do you carry people is generally not by how smart you are and how you come across as a brilliant guy.
Yeah.
People say, yeah, the guy is smart, but do I want to work for him? And many people say, no, I mean, this guy is probably arrogant. He's probably a bit of a pain in the ass. We don't want to really don't feel motivated to go with these people. Or autocrats.
Yeah.
They might be able to push you, but at some point it breaks. So any young person should, because when we are young, we tend to prize our intellect more than other things. And that will remain, that will stay, that will improve. But unless you bring in the human side of it, you are not going to be as fulfilling of the potential that is there in front of you.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. And Rishi, on that note, and your three wonderful lessons. Number one, don't drag the past into the future. Number two, you said market share is a dangerous way to go. Redefine your market, and your example of Lux is fascinating. And the third one you said was strategy cannot succeed without your intellect. Your human side, or the human element, is very critical. Thank you so much for speaking to me about your own journey. Thank you for speaking to me about so many different aspects of strategy. I think not only are you a practitioner, but you are an person from the world of academia as well. And I think a combination of both your avatars has brought a lot of value to our conversation today. Thank you again for speaking to me.
Thank you, Ashutosh. It was lovely to talk with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast. a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.